Hey Weasleys, it's Charlie and you're watching the Burrow. Characters, right? They are the most important part of your story. Any story, right? Whether you're writing a piece of high fantasy, you're writing mystery, you're writing creative nonfiction about you tramping around the backwoods of North America, whatever the case may be, they are essential to a story that your readers will love and a story that your readers will remember. Of course, if you write them poorly, then believe me when I tell you that I understand it can be really, really difficult to write good, convincing, deep characters, right? Most of the time before I start a story, I know who I want my characters to be in a very, very general sense. Like, for example, the story that I wrote for NaNoWriMo that I'm now polishing, the main character Honoka, the only thing I knew about her was that she was, quote, strong, right? And from a character perspective, that's not acceptable, right? Like, you can't just write a character that, like, is like, okay, well, every time she's faced with something, she overcomes it. Or every time, someone's in her face, she's like, F you, guy, I don't need you up in here. Or whatever, right? It's one-dimensional, of course, right? So the struggle for me, of course, was finding ways that I could get past that sort of flat template of characters, right? I wanted to stop writing characters that were just a couple of characteristics on a page and hoping that they developed on their own when I actually went to write the work. Now, you can do this, and I'm certain that a lot of writers do this, right? And certainly the character, you'll get to know the character as you write. The character will develop over time. You'll start to get a clearer picture of them in your head. But the problem for me is that writing that way means that sort of from the beginning, that character isn't very well fleshed out, right? You don't know much about that character, so how can you write them convincingly, interestingly, from the start of your story, right? So that you can go back in your editing phase and maybe not have that much work to do, at least relatively speaking. Now, the best way I think around this is the vignette. Now, the vignette can be used in any number of ways, but basically a vignette is a short story that is meant to flesh out your world, so that when you're diving into it, you can sort of already have that background. You already understand your world, or in the case we're going to talk about today, we already understand your characters, right? So, as I mentioned, the main character of my story, Honoka, when I first started the story, she was super one-dimensional. I had a general idea of what she looked like. I knew that I wanted her not to be a typical heroine in any way, but that was basically all that I knew about her. But I didn't know why she was the way she was. I didn't know how she walked. I didn't know her speech patterns. I didn't know what she cared about in the world, right? And by writing a vignette, again, a short story focused on this one very essential part of the world building, I had those things going into my story, right? So by writing a vignette, I think her vignette, the short story that was focused only on her, was maybe about 10 pages long, and it was about how she came into this order, right? She's part of this order known as Onmyoji, which anyway, what they are is not terribly important, but basically is this order of priests from older Japan, I should say. And I wanted to know how she found her way into that order, right? And so I wrote that story, basically skipping over the inessential parts of her childhood into how she came to be in this order as a young girl, who the characters that she made lasting connections with, the relationships that formed during that time, and basically wrote it up until maybe about a year or two before the story that I wrote for NaNoWriMo was set to start right now. What were the benefits of doing this? The biggest thing, of course, was that I had backstory to inform her character, right? I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt when I began writing her character for the actual novel how she would react in certain situations and how she wouldn't, right? I knew the words she would say or the sentence structure she would use when she was trying to be funny. I knew, you know, the things that she couldn't stand, or the things that she was really, really interested in, or the things she loved. And this is because I took the time to write the vignette. Now, this is, of course, obviously a time-consuming process, but the whole thing is a time-consuming process, so really, what's a little more work, right? I would recommend to you, if you're thinking about your characters and you think you're writing these flat characters, as I thought I was doing for a long time, and maybe I'm still doing now, who knows, is that I would really recommend that you write a vignette. It doesn't have to be terribly long, but just write a vignette for each of your essential characters. You can even write one that's just you talking about the world, right? Like, go really Tolkien about it, but and see if that doesn't help you when you actually dive into the meat of your story, to find that, hey, you've already done a lot of the legwork, right, to build these characters, to build the most essential part of your story, and see how much easier that makes the process. See how much better that makes you feel, more interested, more engaged that makes you feel in your story. And I think you find when you end up sharing that story with other people, the benefit becomes clear, right? They're much more interested in those characters too. So anyway, guys, thanks always for watching the Burrow. Do you write vignettes, or what are some of the other techniques you use to build your characters, to become more invested in your characters? Let me know down in the comments below. And on that note, guys, see you very soon indeed. Go write something awesome. Bye.
And this is Emily for the Burrow, and this is part 2 of my art history, and this is getting into when I first started high school when I was 14, and this is a folder